Okay, I gotta just start talking so that it feels less weird. Tea of the day is jasmine green tea with dark brown sugar and soy milk in my peanut butter jar that I think is one of the prettiest jars of my collection in my life as of yet. So I washed it. I finished the jar of peanut butter and I washed it last night, and just everybody say congratulations because I'm very, very pleased with this jar. Instead of buying glasses and cheaper peanut butter or jelly or, I don't know, canned other jarred goods, consider buying the expensive peanut butter once, having your favorite jar. Also, make milk tea at home. I don't know. I may do a series on this because, so I'm a barista, not like currently, but spiritually and in the past. So I kind of have, let's just say, strong opinions about coffee and tea preparation. I have lots of crazy ideas and good ideas, I think, for you making your own drinks at home. Because let's be honest, we don't all have $70 a week to drop on the amount of caffeine that we would like to be consuming. And it's really, really sad when you go to a coffee shop and you pay a bunch of money and the coffee's bad and it's watery, or it's just not what you want, usually not the barista's fault, but in this economy, I don't know. If you have the money, and go to coffee shops, tip your baristas, and, supplement with these. We'll talk about that more. So good. Back to more on topic. Today, I want to start a series about being an artist, and specifically practicing how to be an artist. I just wrote practicing artist. And you can hear about artist practices, and I think that kind of has a slightly different meaning to what I'm trying to talk about. Thinking about exercises, thoughts, mindsets, practices you can engage in that will improve the type of artist you are wanting to be. To not only create the kind of art you're hoping to make, but to find out what kind of art you're wanting to make and improve your confidence as an artist. Be able to say, yeah, I'm an artist. Okay. What are people going to say? No, you're not. Okay. You don't have to care about other people's definitions of what you do. A lot of people think that if you're not paying your rent with your art is a hobby for you. I say if the only purpose of your art is to pay your rent, you're probably, and that's the only purpose, first of all, congrats. Second of all, I think you're missing part of your artist self, your artistness. So, girl, I have some ideas for you as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about different types of success, your mindset, your skills, how to work on different types of skills that are relevant to being an artist. And I'm going to talk about some specifically visual art things, but I think the majority of these also apply to other creative disciplines, because a lot of the things are the same. You may not be drawing something, but maybe your observational skills are still important to you. And then one that's definitely important to a lot of creative disciplines is concepts, direction, confidence, and some things like that. We'll go into more depth. This will expand from here. Today I'm just going to start talking. So this is the ramblings of a practicing artist. I'm talking about practicing. I keep waiting for cars to go past, but they're always going to be going past. Number one, today we're going to talk about direction and confidence. I'm going to talk a little bit about my own life, because direction and confidence are two things I did not always have as a creative person. Just say they take a daily commitment and practice. It's something that you build up over time, and then you continue to build upon and discover. So my thoughts is that in order to have confidence in your work, you need to have a direction. This needs to be an intrinsic motivation. You may have heard about this. I feel like I heard about it in educational contexts. I feel like I heard about intrinsic motivation through educational context, where we're talking about if you can get students to be intrinsically motivated instead of externally motivated to be good people and to learn, then that's great. That's a whole different thing. Won't get too far into that today, but we can talk about my educational theory sometime as a art educator adjacent person. But as you grow up or grow into a creative area, hobby, practice, job, whatever, pretty quickly you start getting some feedback. So depending on where you're at and what you're doing, you can get a lot of positive feedback and you can get a lot of negative feedback. And I'm kind of going to talk about how I ran out of storage, but as I was saying, we're going to talk about how positive feedback is not always necessarily helpful. Yes. What else is there? Because you have a reason for making art, and I think that you know that deep down, but it's a lot easier to trust the people around you and go off of their feedback. Maybe you have an art teacher who's super encouraging, but they're really pushing you in a direction that maybe you don't really understand the purpose of, and maybe you don't super align with. So maybe they're like, tone down your conceptual elements, you don't want to be so harsh about that. Maybe they're like, really try to be more realistic in these things. And I don't want to ruin any art teachers' lives out here and trying to do their jobs, because there's definitely a ton of work to be done in pushing yourself, expanding yourself, and trying different things. And so if you really like to draw, like, I don't know, like anime figures, like style, or like a cartoonish style, and your art teacher's trying to push you to do more life drawing, more realistic drawing, I say keep doing what you're drawn to, and then also at the same time try out this other thing that they're trying to push you to do. And I can't speak for specific things, but I know generally, and in my experience, even if you end up like, well, I'm just going to go back and like draw graphic novels, so why do I don't care about drawing realism. You can take things that you learned from pursuing getting better at realism and invest that back into your like comic work. All of those experiences and practices, it's not like wasted. Like that is going to be helpful in doing what you want to do the majority of the time. And even just kind of building up your resilience and being able to do something that you're not comfortable with and try it and fail and keep trying and explore. Yeah. Also, you may get a lot of feedback from family, friends, people who are less connected to art themselves. So they'll say a lot of things like, I cannot draw a stick figure. It's so cool you can draw this. And that's great. I'm so happy that they are saying something generally positive and encouraging about your work. This is not necessarily the person to be creating art like for, because they may not be as excited about your work that is not, say, realistic. So if they're really interested in photorealism because they can't understand how somebody can get that good at art where they can do that, if you're interested in photorealism, great. But if you don't really care about replicating something perfectly, don't feel like you have to pursue that to prove to people that you can do the type of art that they're interested in, something like that. Because if they really support you and want to understand your work, if they just really support you, they're going to be interested in different types of work that you're doing. And if they're not, then you will find people that are. I remember my grandpa I had this like really zoomed in big painting. I had taken a picture of a water fountain, and so it's like these green colors, and it's really just abstracted at this point because it's so up close. And he like was joking and laughing about it looking like an alligator or something, which it really didn't. It was green, Maybe there was like a scale adjacent pattern kind of thing going on. You don't have to like take that to heart, like leave it as it is. It's all good. And you don't have to be like, what does this mean that somebody sees this in my work? Because a lot of people are trying to associate it with something that they've seen before and understand, and that's part of people seeing your art, but it doesn't mean that like that's what it is, or like the full extent of what that piece can be. And then I've also had experiences where, so I went to college and I was in a really small art department. At the very beginning, I was like the youngest person there. There were just not people in my age group for some reason, and like my year or whatever. I was like coming into all these classes. I felt like alone with upperclassmen. I had taken like 2 art classes in high school. My art teacher quit and I never had to take art class again. So I'd been coming from painting with discount watercolors on my carpeted bedroom floor for years. Now I'm in an art studio, which to me is like a huge, massive deal. And looking back, I'm like so comfortable in that setting now. I think I could be comfortable in more settings with more resources, but I never experienced anything like that. and I hadn't even been around people who were interested in art or considered themselves artists really at all. So I'm coming into this and I'm like horrified. I don't know what I'm doing. I have like no foundations of art. So I'm learning all this stuff for the first time with like juniors and seniors. So this is where I'm coming in. And then in a few years, I kind of find myself where those people have graduated. So now I'm like one of the older, not like older, but like have been there longer than some of the newer students. And my like grade is still practically non-existent for like my year, my grade, whatever it is. However, I can explain that possibly. And I start doing really well in the department in school affiliated shows and this like journal we had, stuff like that, classes, and like I went all in because I love art and I was trying to learn everything I possibly could, because do you know how much an education costs? And I want to do something creative. Like, I'm investing in this with everything that I have left, and I love it. I won't go into, because there's always extensive like social dynamics in any sort of setting like this, and I think that this one was particularly unique. I don't think it's helpful to like go into that for just random people. What do we say? Having success in such a small department, the people that got there after me, like joined the program after me, did not see where I was like struggling. I made some ugly art. I entered shows and did not place whatsoever. I don't know if I appeared so, but I felt very discouraged at times, very like intimidated at times, frankly struggled quite a bit. But they're seeing me place in shows frequently. I could graduate from that experience and be like, wow, got a good score in my capstone project, stuff like that, and continue to seek that type of approval and tie my worth and who I am as an artist to the artist that gets in shows, to the artist that gets good feedback from this really truly very small group of people who I'm very thankful for, but do not represent everyone. So yeah. And I think that whether you're succeeding or not, you have to be able to find direction and purpose in your art and being an artist without tying that to positive or negative feedback. If no professor is ever going to grade your art again, are you going to keep making art? If you did not get a stamp of approval from a professor or whoever, would you be proud of that artwork the same? I'll wait for the siren to go. So that brings me to, who are you making art for? And there's three layers of this, 3 levels. First of all, at least I think for myself, and that maybe you should consider, making art for everybody. I don't understand the art world whatsoever, and I don't claim to, but I get this general sense that a lot of successful artists or academic people, they're making art for institutions and academic people and successful artists, which I don't really care that you make really cool art. Me personally, I think art is about everybody. I don't want to make art that intentionally is difficult to understand, things like that, like for the sole purpose of being confusing, because I think that would just make me an effective communicator, or I don't know, I don't get the purpose of trying to do that. Under this umbrella of everyone, I am trying to communicate to the everyday person, the majority of people, the people that are around me, the people that might come and see a show or see your work on social media, things like that. I don't want it to be detached from reality. I want it to be grounded in common experiences and my experience. I want it to be relatable, because that kind of ties back to the purpose of my art and what I'm trying to communicate with it. I'm making it for people. I'm not making it for approval. Yeah. I feel like I could go in more in depth there, but I won't. And below all of this, and kind of at the core and heart and center of my practice, and I think you should really, really consider this one, deeply consider this one, is, who are you making art for? Your inner child. Now, I don't claim to know what I'm talking about when it comes to your inner child. I know that's kind of like a topic in therapy and stuff. I'm not trying to talk about that. I'm trying to talk about, so maybe I'm using semi-incorrect terminology, but the way I think of it, at least, is I go back to why did I start making art? Because I have always loved this. I sure wasn't getting academic approval about my art when I was 8, coloring by myself in my room so that I could go to sleep. I think back to who I was growing up, and I try to ask her, what do you think about what I'm making? Because if she's like, this is kind of hollow, well, that's not exciting to me. This is boring. I'm not making the kind of art that I care about, you know? It kind of helps me to differentiate my own opinion and values from the opinion and values that have kind of been placed onto me that are easy to confuse with your own. It kind of becomes one at a certain point. But maybe it's not genuine. Like for me, I've discovered that as a kid, I made art as a way to self-regulate. And so I'm super interested in art therapy concepts now because of that, and because of life experiences I've had as an adult as well, but also that personal experience of like using art as a form of journaling. And so before being able to sleep, I needed to process my day and my experiences through just drawing. And so I have work about visually journaling, and I can do that with like oil paint now, which is so cool. Like I didn't touch oil paint until college. Here I am being able to use it, just stuff like that is cool. The purpose at the very core is still very much so the same and comes from a similar place. That's just an example. So think about what drew you to art, what you enjoyed about it before you were recognized for it, before you thought you were good at it, before you worried about those things. That kind of gives you your direction. What are you doing? Why? What's your purpose in this? Once you have like a general idea of that, another one of mine is exploring. Like I love experimenting with new mediums. I'm not going to stick to painting for the rest of my life. I'm gonna do stuff like this, and that's great. Confidence. When you derive your sense of artist from an intrinsic place, from this is literally like how I was born. I was a kid and this was within me to want to do this. And I'm not making art to get approval. I'm not making art to get academic approval, social approval, etc. For people to like it and think it's pretty. All those things can be part of it. But if those things don't happen, which I have no control over, I know that I'm trying to make art that I am proud of. And even if it's just the process of trying and not the finished product, that's what I'm doing. And so it gives you this confidence in, like nobody else can tell you that you're not doing that. So they can say to your face, I don't like your art. And you can be like, thanks for sharing. You know, that's not going to shake the core of who you are as an artist and make you question that, because like I already know. I know what I'm doing. I am confident in my work and proud of my practice. I don't need every single person to validate that. In fact, I expect people to come up against my work and disagree with it and be confused by it and made uncomfortable by it. And in a way, that kind of tells me it's doing something, it's saying something. That can even be encouraging. I will say in this discussion of feedback, I don't think I have the greatest experience with like negative feedback in my art, which I'm very privileged in that I haven't had a lot of people be super negative about my work, which is not the consensus that I have heard from other people. Tell me like straight up their art teacher in high school like told them to stop making art, and I'm like, I cannot imagine. As somebody who like has taught kids art, I cannot imagine trying to like ruin that for a literal child. Something's wrong with them. You don't need to listen to them. Even if it's just them like being kind of overly pushing you or overly critical of your work, or some random person being like, that's ugly, I don't know, when you're trying to draw something. So, talking about practice, a huge tool for me in my being an artist is journaling. So maybe journaling's not your thing. You can press record and talk to yourself. Have like an activity that's more mindful where you set out to think about something. So it's like you kind of have a journal prompt in front of you or on your mind, on your written on your phone notes or whatever, like this is the thing that I'm going to kind of contemplate. Journaling works for you, do that. If it's going on a walk and having this like thing to think about, if it's while I'm at the gym today, while I'm doing these dishes, while you're cleaning, meditating, like if you can just sit there and think about something nice, I can't, but then you can do that. So let's kind of write the journal prompt, because this is going to be a little bit of a repetitive thing. You might do this once and be like, yep, I know what I'm doing. Or you might need to do this for the rest of your life and keep coming back to it, keep growing, building upon it. So let's say first, when do I remember first making art and why? The beginning of engaging with this medium, with this practice, with this form of expression, what was I doing? Just think about it. I have a terrible memory, so I don't remember a ton, but the things I remember were really helpful. 2, since then, what were just kind of like make a list of reactions that have stuck with you, reactions to your art. Positive, negative, neutral, non-existent. How do people react to your art? Maybe think about how that influenced you. Did you change your art because of that? Did you rebel against it? And then, probably last, as you're making art and you're like, staring at your painting, contemplating, should I just stop painting this? It's so ugly, it's in the ugly phase. Or like I've been staring at this, tiny little section of a painting, drawing, whatever, and like painting over the same section over and over again, and I'm too close to it, I need to take a step back. Maybe before you just take a step back, look at it and go back to it. Walk out the room, walk to the other side of the room, journal, do whatever thing where you can think about this. Go back to question number 1 and ask yourself, this person, me, but past me, younger me before all of these opinions, what would they think of what I'm doing right now? The thoughts I'm having about my art piece, are they more connected to like that younger version of me, their creative process, or are they more connected to these ideas I have circling around in my brain that are from other sources? Who am I making this for? Best practice you can do to think about that. If you have some of your old art, this might be a good time to go collect it, go through it. If you are a writer, go get your journals and stuff. That is always hilarious for me because I've always been dramatic. So I'm reading back and I'm like, I don't know, it's really funny and I can't spell. Collect pictures of you as a kid. What was your sense of style? What did you think about the color turquoise? Who were your friends? What were you interested in? What was the type of art you were making? What were you journaling about? To kind of get this picture of your younger self. Compile that, journal about it, reference it. I also want to acknowledge this may or may not work for everybody. Everyone has very different experiences. I remember talking about a similar concept to one of my friends, and she was like, if I focused on what I cared about as a child, I'd be not doing well. I'm not talking about maybe your reactions to things so much as or the things themselves that were difficult in your childhood, but maybe some of your reactions to those, but at a deeper level. Or if you could be an adult in that setting or in that kid's life, how would you be thinking? That's probably something I need to talk to more people about, have more conversations about before I form many thoughts on it. Okay, but tune back in later. We're gonna do art. We're gonna work on stuff together. We're gonna pictures I've been creating, and we can talk about how to install gallery shows. What is installation, artwork as a medium? We can talk about whatever I want, whatever we want to talk about. In this series, we're going to talk about stuff like how to improve your observational skills through sketching, collecting, images, composition. We're going to talk about how avoiding failure and focusing on weaknesses and your weaknesses kills your creativity, kills your opportunities and your strengths. It's taking from you. We're going to talk about investing in something out of love without the need for external value and expectation. We kind of talked about that today. Your mindset, if you knew you were going to fail at art, why are you doing it? Is there a purpose? I think there is. We're going to talk about tea. But basically, I got time on my hands until I find a job. So yeah, I will see you soon.